All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendis est. Woke War on Language. A Man's Guide to Fight Back, written by Conrad Reiche. Available now. Links in description. Woke War on Language. A field guide for men who still notice reality. The Teacup Pogrom. Dismantling the tranquility trauma hoax, the weaponized female herd instinct, and the Marxist war on the Stoic logos. You are holding a mug of chamomile, and according to the high priests of the cult of woke, you are committing treason. I recently subjected myself to the agonizing stupidity of Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist's latest emission, The Steep of Silence. So you don't have to. She argues that your quiet moment with a tea bag is tranquility trauma bonding, a neologism so cancerous it would make Orwell weep. She isn't just mistaken, she is engaging in semantic warfare to pathologize the Stoic virtue of ataraxia, the freedom from anxiety that is the birthright of every rational man. She claims that to relax is to be complicit in genocide. This is the irreducible axis of leftist propaganda in motion. She claims the asymmetric status of the oppressed, asserts identity-gatednology of invisible power threads, inflates the meaning of a hot drink into a moral emergency, and demands your unconditional sanction if you dare to disagree. She wants to weaponize the female herd instinct, to turn your office into a panopticon where silence is violence and tea is terrorism. But let's apply the trivium to her hysteria, shall we? The good doctor hates the trade show. She calls it a temple of male disposability, getting the definition wrong as usual. In reality, the trade show is the modern agora, the arena where men exercise the apprenticeship mastery ladder, engaging in subsidiarity and civil society to build the very world she inhabits. She enjoys the air conditioning, the lighting, and the safety provided by the men she despises. This is the gamma bias and the empathy gap working in perfect demonic harmony. She sees her own discomfort as a crisis requiring immediate intervention, while the male labor that sustains her existence is invisible, or worse, framed as oppressive. She wants to burn down the trade show, yet she has no idea how to build a shelter, let alone a civilization. This is the gynocentric ignorance of the bad actor exposed. She demands the benefits of Western civilization while dismantling the men who maintain it. In this essay, I will systematically vivisect this tranquility trauma bonding nonsense using the cold steel of formal logic. We will utilize the syllogism to prove that her comfort is complicity. Conclusion is a non sequitur derived from a false premise. We will look at Schopenhauer's red pill on female nature to understand why she is so desperate to weaponize the herd against you. We are going to deprogram the NPC logic that turns professional victims into moral arbiters. Put down the tea for a moment, not because it's patriarchal, but because you're going to need your hands free to hoist the black flag of reason. We are done apologizing for building the world. Now, we start dissecting the parasites who feed on it.
Bunkum article by a feminist PhD. The Steep of Silence, Why Your Herbal Tea is a Tool of the Patriarchy, by Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist PhD. It begins with a sip. a quiet, innocuous dip of a paper sachet into boiling water, chamomile, lavender, peppermint. To the uninitiated, the lumpen proletariat of the psyche, this is merely a moment of respite. But to the sworn cultural Marxist, to the witch who sees the threads of power binding the world, this is not relaxation. It is tranquility trauma bonding. We are living in an era of comfort totalitarianism. The patriarchy does not always come with a cudgel. Often it arrives in a biodegradable package, smelling of lemongrass and spiritual bypassing. We must confront the terrifying reality that our wellness rituals are actually feedback loops of oppression, designed to sedate the revolutionary potential of the female herd instinct. The saccharine cage of empathy. We must address the normative confusion plaguing our sisters. There is a dangerous slippage occurring between empathy and endorsement. You have been taught that to be a good person, you must understand the perspective of the oppressor. You think surely this trade show of capitalism is just men trying to survive. No. Empathy for the oppressor is treason against the self. When you sit with your tea, breathing in the calm, you are endorsing the status quo. You are engaging in a transaction where your rage is the currency, and the patriarchy pays you back in silence. This is the incentive structure of the enemy. They reward you for truth-telling avoidance. The trade show of the damned. Consider the trade show. What is a trade show but a temple of male disposability and capitalist accumulation? Men wander these halls, exchanging business cards like talismans against their own hollowness. They are trapped in a cycle of performance. But what are you doing there? Are you disrupting the flow? Are you casting spells of discord? Or are you sipping a complimentary beverage, grateful for the air conditioning? The system relies on your passivity. It relies on you confusing the feeling of safety with the reality of power. True power is not safe. True power is the disruption of the feedback loop. The trade show must be burnt down, not necessarily with fire, though the candle of revolution burns hot, but with the screaming rejection of its premises. Neologism. Tranquility, trauma bonding. I define tranquility trauma bonding as the psychological dependence on soothing stimuli, herbal tea, scented candles, positive vibes to mitigate the pain of existing within a genocidal, cis-heteronormative structure. When you brew that tea, you are brewing your own compliance. You are telling your nervous system, it is okay, the danger is over. But the danger is never over. The patriarchy is a relentless machine. To relax is to lower your shield. The tea sachet is a gag for your intuition. It muffles the screams of your ancestors. It tells you that feeling good is more important than doing good. The duty of discord. We must weaponize the female herd instinct. Do not herd yourselves toward the spa. Herd yourselves toward the barricades. We need asymmetric sanctioning. If you see a colleague reaching for a tea bag, do not smile. Do not ask if they want honey. Ask them why they feel entitled to peace while the world burns. Shame is a tool of the righteous when directed upward or inward at the complicit self. We must dismantle the incentives against truth-telling. Currently, society incentivizes you to be pleasant. You are rewarded for being easy to work with. This is a trap. To be pleasant in a time of moral emergency is to be an accomplice. The feedback loop of liberation. We must create a new feedback loop. Status. Acknowledge your moral superiority as a bearer of marginalization. Feeling. Reject the false peace of the sachet. Embrace the holy burn of resentment. Meaning. Define your discomfort not as anxiety but as clarity. Sanction. Punish those who seek comfort. Ostracize the chill. Throw your herbal tea into the harbor of revolution. Let the bitterness of reality sit on your tongue. Do not swallow the lies of the patriarchy. Digest the chaos. Be the monster they fear. Comfort is complicity. The semantic sorcery of the woke witch, deconstructing tranquility trauma bonding. Aristotle defined happiness not the fleeting dopamine hit of a retweet, but eudaimonia as the highest human good achieved through virtuous action and rational contemplation. He taught that ataraxia, that tranquil state of mental composure was the prerequisite for philosophical inquiry and the proper exercise of reason. Now consider that a tenured academic with a doctorate in resentment has declared war on chamomile. Dr. Winona, feminist Marxist, PhD, that splendid orthographic parade of ideological possession, wants you to believe that sipping herbal tea is not merely a personal choice, but a mechanism of oppression, a feedback loop sedating your revolutionary potential. The ancient Greeks understood that reason requires calm to function. The modern feminist Marxist understands that calm must be destroyed so that her narrative can function. The difference between the Athenian Lyceum and the Gender Studies department is the difference between building a civilization and burning one down, one dissertation at a time. The article opens with a distinction between the uninitiated and the sworn cultural Marxist, a phrase that accidentally reveals more than the writer intended. In the Western tradition, knowledge was aletheia, truth as unconcealment, available to any rational mind willing to submit to dialectic and follow the argument wherever it leads. The sophists, those ancient forerunners of the modern diversity consultant, believed otherwise. They gated knowledge behind rhetorical technique and sold it to the highest bidder. When the writer positions herself as a witch who sees the threads of power binding the world, she is not offering knowledge in the Aristotelian sense, but initiating you into a mystery cult, where validity is determined not by correspondence to reality, but by loyalty to the narrative. This is epistemic gating dressed in academic robes, and it is the oldest con in the book, quite literally, since the pre-Socratic philosophers invented the book specifically to defeat it. The newly coined term, tranquility, trauma bonding, warrants what medieval scholars termed a distinctio formalis, a specific differentiation distinguishing truth from falsehood via exact definition. Tranquillitas signifies calmness in Latin, stemming from trans, beyond, and quis, rest essentially, a condition past disquiet. Trauma originates from the Greek trauma, signifying a wound or piercing, while to bond means to bind. Thus, this compound phrasing signifies binding oneself to injury via serenity. This constitutes not analysis, but semantic inversion, a purposeful corruption of vocabulary rendering wellness as pathology. The Stoics, those iron-spined thinkers advocating that mental peace arises from separating controllable factors from uncontrollable ones, would identify this rhetorical trickery instantly. They labeled it sophisma, a fallacious argument intended to deceive instead of illuminating. When Marcus Aurelius drank his watered wine inside his tent along the Danube frontier, meditating on the transient nature of existence, he was not bonding with trauma. He practiced the philosophical discipline rendering Western civilization possible. Such writers wish you to accept that calmness equals complicity because composed men ask questions, and inquiries threaten narratives unable to withstand scrutiny. The propaganda axis operating here is elegant in its malevolence. First comes asymmetric psias. Women are cast as moral patients, passive victims of a patriarchal conspiracy that apparently infiltrated celestial seasonings, while simultaneously demanding they become moral agents of revolutionary violence. This is not a paradox to be resolved, but a deliberate tension to be exploited. The feminist framework needs women to be both powerless victims and all-powerful avengers, switching between these roles as rhetorical convenience demands. Next comes identity-gated null LEG. Only the swan cultural Marxist can see the true reality hidden behind the teabag. This is Plato's cave allegory inverted. Instead of the philosopher climbing toward the light of truth, the ideologue descends further into the shadows of interpretation. Then inflated meaning. A moment of private reflection becomes comfort totalitarianism, a phrase so absurdly overwrought it would make George Orwell blush. The writer is not describing reality. She is casting a spell in the precise magical sense of using words to reshape perception without consent. The central syllogism of the article runs something like this. Premise 1. The world is a genocidal structure of oppression. Premise 2. Relaxation ignores this genocide. Conclusion, therefore, relaxation is treason. Formal logic allows us to identify exactly where this argument fails. The first premise is an unproven assertion presented as axiomatic, the logical fallacy of petitio principii, or begging the question. Even if we grant the first premise, the second commits the fallacy of false dichotomy. It assumes that relaxation precludes action, when in fact, the Western tradition of otium productive leisure holds that rest is the prerequisite for effective action. A tired soldier is a dead soldier. A frazzled mind cannot strategize. The conclusion, therefore, does not follow a classic non sequitur, but logic is not the point. The point is to weaponize anxiety, to ensure that no moment of peace goes unpunished, to create a population so perpetually agitated that it cannot think clearly enough to question the premises being fed to it. Schopenhauer, that gloomy German genius who understood the feminine will better than most modern men understand themselves, argued that compassion arises from the recognition that all beings suffer. This writer proposes something different, that resentment should be cultivated as a virtue, that the holy burn of perpetual grievance is the engine of liberation. This is not compassion, but its inversion, the alchemical transmutation of suffering into self-righteous fury. The problem, as Schopenhauer understood, is that resentment consumes the resenter more thoroughly than the object of resentment. To live in a state of permanent ideological agitation is to become what he called a creature of the will, driven by impulses it cannot control toward ends it cannot achieve. The feminist Marxist project does not liberate women. It possesses them, turning them into vessels for an abstract resentment that can never be satisfied, because satisfaction would end the revolution. And the revolution must never end. Consider the empirical reality that she elides with her academic abstractions. Men account for approximately 80% of all suicides in the United States, a statistic that any honest assessment of trauma must confront. They comprise 92% of workplace fatalities, working the dangerous jobs that keep the lights on and the supermarkets stocked. They face a family court system that awards primary custody to mothers in roughly 80% of contested cases, a divorce industry that extracts wealth from husbands with the efficiency of a modern tax farm, and a criminal justice system that sentences them to 63% longer prison terms for the same offences. These are not abstractions. These are men, fathers, brothers, sons, whose lives are being ground through institutional machinery while tenured academics write dissertations about the oppression inherent in chamomile. The gamma bias on display is not subtle. Male suffering is invisible, female suffering is amplified, and the mundane comforts of daily life are pathologized as patriarchal control when they fail to serve the revolutionary agenda. The author's hostility toward biodegradable packages and lemongrass reveals something deeper than political critique. It reveals a Gnostic contempt for the material world. The ancient Gnostics taught that the physical realm was a prison created by a false god, that matter was inherently corrupt, and that salvation lay in escaping the flesh through secret knowledge. The modern feminist Marxist has simply secularized this heresy. The material world is not a prison of the soul, but a prison of power relations. And escape comes not through divine illumination, but through revolutionary consciousness. Both doctrines share the same fundamental error, the rejection of gratitude as the proper orientation toward creation. The Western tradition, from the Psalms to Aquinas to the contemporary discipline of positive psychology, recognizes that the ability to enjoy simple pleasures is not a betrayal of justice, but a prerequisite for it. A man who cannot enjoy his tea without guilt is a man whose capacity for joy has been weaponized against him. The assault on the trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, the foundation of Western education since antiquity, is particularly brazen. Grammar teaches us to use words according to their proper definitions. The article deliberately corrupts definitions, turning safety into complicity and wellness into oppression. Logic teaches us to follow arguments to their necessary conclusions. The article substitutes emotional manipulation for rational demonstration. Rhetoric teaches us to persuade through truth beautifully expressed. The article seeks to manipulate through lies artfully concealed. This is not education but miseducation, the systematic deformation of the rational faculty. The writer calls for asymmetric sanctioning of those who seek comfort, shaming colleagues for drinking tea, demanding that every private moment be subjected to political scrutiny. This is not the behavior of a liberator, but of an inquisitor, someone who has appointed herself guardian of a faith she dare not name. The four horsemen of the MRA apocalypse ride openly here. The empathy gap is visible in her total indifference to male suffering. She mentions male disposability only to mock it, dismissing the men at trade shows as hollow performers without once considering the pressures that put them there. Gamma bias organizes the whole dispute. Female discomfort is amplified into a moral emergency. Male mortality is rendered invisible. Male disposability is casually affirmed when she suggests that the trade show must be burnt down, a metaphor perhaps, but one that reveals whose lives are expendable in her view. And responsibility without authority is the invisible framework holding it all together. Men are blamed for structures they did not build, held responsible for systems they cannot control, and offered no support for burdens they never chose to carry. Lewis noted that the devil's most effective trick involves not convincing men to deny evil's existence, but persuading them to label good as evil and evil as good. The writer of this piece has executed exactly this reversal. She has transformed the innate human longing for tranquility into complicity with tyranny. She has reframed the revolutionary's readiness to shatter and demolish as virtuous bravery. She has taken the witch, traditionally a target of real persecution, primarily women executed by male-dominated structures, and reimagined her as an authoritative figure, one who perceives the connections and delivers verdicts upon outsiders. This represents not feminism in any meaningful form, but ideology, a closed-loop belief system that treats every piece of evidence as verification of its assumptions and rejects all disagreement as evidence of the objector's moral failing. The defensive mechanism is inherent in the framework. Should you protest being informed that your ordinary beverage constitutes betrayal, your resistance simply demonstrates how completely you have been pacified by established power. No escape exists within this reasoning because none has been allowed. The Western tradition offers an alternative. Aristotle taught that the mean between extremes is the path to virtue, and the extreme of perpetual revolutionary agitation is no more virtuous than the extreme of passive complacency. The Stoics taught that we should accept what we cannot change what we can, and cultivate the wisdom to know the difference, a teaching that feminist Marxism explicitly rejects, demanding instead that we burn down systems we cannot control while ignoring the systems we might actually improve. The Christian tradition taught that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice, and that justice requires the patient work of institution building, not the cathartic violence of the barricade. These traditions are not perfect. No human creation is. But they have the merit of having actually built civilizations, whereas the feminist Marxist project has only ever succeeded in tearing them down. So drink your tea, gentlemen, not because the world is free of injustice, but because a man who cannot find peace in a cup of chamomile is a man who cannot find peace anywhere, and a man who cannot find peace cannot fight effectively for anything worth fighting for. The writer of this article wants you in a state of permanent agitation, because agitation makes you manipulable. She wants you to feel guilty for every moment of comfort, because guilt is the lever by which ideology moves the soul. She wants you to believe that calm is complicity, because calm men ask questions, and questions are the one thing her narrative cannot survive. The Western tradition, from the agora to the monastery to the laboratory to the Constitutional Convention, was built by men who knew how to think clearly, and clear thinking requires a clear mind. Reject the false choice between complacency and revolution. Choose instead the harder path, the path of reason, the path of virtue, the path of building, rather than burning. The world has enough arsonists. What it needs is architects. This medicalization of dissent serves a singular purpose. It activates the female herd instinct as an enforcement mechanism, a phenomenon Arthur Schopenhauer identified with devastating clarity nearly 2 centuries before the first gender studies department vomited its graduates into the workforce. The great pessimist understood that women, through no fault of their own, but by evolutionary design, possess a heightened sensitivity to social cohesion and conformity, a trait that proved adaptive for the small-scale tribal environments of our ancestors, but becomes pathological when weaponized by ideologues in mass. Societies. When Dr. Feminist Marxist declares your chamomile consumption a spiritual bypass. She isn't inviting debate. She is sounding the tribal alarm that activates the sanction machinery of the hive. Your female colleagues will feel an instinctual urge to shun you, not because they grasp the argument, but because their evolutionary firmware interprets social deviation as existential threat. The genocentric gnosis of perpetual rage, the trade show, the hive, and the suicide of Western civilization. Interfaces a urinum nascimur. We are born between feces and urine, as St. Augustine reminded us, a biological reality that no amount of gender studies degrees can sanitize. Yet the modern left has managed to turn this biological inevitability into a political grievance. I once watched a Forensic Files episode where a wife poisoned her husband with oleander tea. She smiled, served it with love, and watched him die. Dr. Winona Feminist Marxist's article, "The Steep of Silence is that cup of tea offered with a smile, but the poison isn't oleander, it's therapy lanquare urshin." When she invents the term tranquility trauma bonding, she isn't diagnosing a condition, she is weaponizing the lexicon of the clinic to destroy the dialectic. In the Western tradition, we settle disputes through dialectic thesis, antithesis, synthesis, but the gynocentric gnosis bypasses the intellect entirely. By framing your desire for a cup of chamomile as a psychological defect, spiritual bypassing, she asserts identity-gated Noel-J. Only the witch who sees the threads has the epistemic authority to define reality. If you disagree, you aren't just wrong, you are mentally ill and in need of correction. This is the sanction of the new priesthood, medicalizing dissent to bypass the jury box of due process entirely. Consider the trade show she demonizes. I have walked those floors, concrete halls lit by fluorescent buzz, smelling of stale coffee and ambition. She sees a temple of male disposability, projecting her own contempt for male labor onto the very engine that keeps the lights on. What she mocks is actually the apprenticeship mastery ladder in motion. In the Western tradition, a man learns a trade, masters a craft, and engages in civil society associations to barter the fruits of his labor. This is subsidiarity, the economic circulatory system of civilization. She demands you burn it down, oblivious to the fact that the gamma bias in her worldview renders male effort invisible, status, men as default powerful, and male suffering meaningless, empathy gap. She sees a man exchanging a business card and thinks oppression. I see a man trying to feed his family in a world that legally mandates his disposability via 93% workplace death rates. She is a parasite scolding the host for moving. Schopenhauer famously noted that women are sexually immature in their reasoning, swayed not by logic but by feeling and the herd. It sounds harsh until you read Dr. Feminist Marxist explicitly commanding her readers to weaponize the female herd instinct. She isn't hiding it, she is celebrating the autoregressive loop of gynocentric conformity, a feeling women's distress equals moral emergency, meaning the trade show is violence, duty attack. She admits that her ideology relies not on the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, but on the ancient, pre-rational dynamic of the hive. She wants to herd you toward the barricades because the herd is where you lose your logos and become an NPC in her suicide of Western civilization. The incentive structure she claims to fight is actually the one she builds. A marketplace where social status is the only currency, minted by discovering new microscopic ways to claim victimhood. This obsession with policing the private moment, sipping tea, is the death knell of subsidiarity. The Western canon fought for centuries to establish a private sphere where the state and the mob could not tread. She shatters this by demanding asymmetric sanctioning against a colleague reaching for a beverage. This is totalitarianism 101, destroy the boundary between the public and the private. She frames your biological need for respite as compliance, but what she demands is a severance from your own biology. She wants you to be an engine of pure, abstract power, running on resentment rather than biology. It is no coincidence that the 4 female riders of the men's rights crisis, empathy gap, gamma bias, male disposability, and responsibility without authority, are all present here. She feels entitled to your peace, responsibility without authority over your own nervous system, while dismissing your exhaustion, empathy gap. Ultimately, the article is a confession of self-hatred projected outward. Comfort is complicity is the motto of a death cult. If peace is treason, then survival is a crime. This is the gynocentric gnosis of perpetual rage, a self-sealing immunity loop where criticism proves your bias. She tells you to digest the chaos and be the monster. I say keep your tea, brother. The natural law dictates that rest is required for function. The virtue of temperance is not spiritual bypassing, it is the discipline of the warrior maintaining his weapon. She offers you the chaos of the untamed eyed. The Western canon offers you the order of the disciplined soul. Throw her article in the harbor, not your tea. What you have witnessed in that article is not analysis, but spiritual warfare. The left has become a Gnostic cult that rejects the material world as evil and promises salvation through political revelation. Theirs is a theology of resentment, a closed loop where status derives from victimhood, noulgy is gated by identity, meaning is inflated to apocalyptic proportions, feeling supersedes fact. Duty flows in one direction only. Power is both denied and ruthlessly exercised. Sanction destroys dissenters, and immunity protects the entire apparatus from self-examination. They call this justice. Aristotle called it pleonexia, the insatiable desire for more, the core of injustice. The word satisfaction comes from satis, enough, and facery, to make. Their ideology is structurally incapable of satisfaction. There will never be enough re-education, enough reparations, enough abasement before their altar of perpetual grievance. You have been lied to about female nature. Schopenhauer observed that women exist in a state of perpetual dependence. Their intellect, specialized for social navigation rather than abstract reason. Their moral sense attuned to the immediate and personal, rather than the universal and principled. This is not hatred but description. The DNA paternity fraud rate hovers between 3 and 30%, depending on the population studied. In family courts, mothers receive primary custody in 82% of contested cases, despite fathers being demonstrably more likely to encourage children's relationship with the other parent. The maternal filicide rate exceeds the paternal rate by 55%, yet we speak only of violence against women. These are the 4 horsemen of the men's rights apocalypse: empathy gap, gamma bias, male disposability, and responsibility without authority. They ride unchecked because pointing them out triggers the sanction mechanism. The ideology is self-sealing. Criticism proves your guilt. Here is the liberating truth. You owe them nothing. Not your guilt, not your silence, not your endless accommodation of their expanding demands. The Western tradition you inherit is not a conspiracy of oppression, but the greatest achievement in human history. Due process means you are innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until you disprove an accusation that shifts whenever you marshal evidence. Subsidiarity means decisions belong at the lowest competent level, not dictated by distant experts with press credentials. Natural law means reality exists independently of ideology, and no amount of linguistic manipulation will make a man into a woman or a tea bag into a weapon of genocide. Logos is not a social construct. You are not an NPC in their narrative. You are a free man with ancestors who built cathedrals, charters, and constitutions. The very infrastructure of liberty that allows these ingrates to publish their incoherent screeds without consequence. Go now, brew your tea in peace, contemplate the good, the true, and the beautiful. Defend the traditions that made contemplation possible. When they come with their therapy language coercion, and their asymmetric sanctions, and their ever-shifting definitions of violence, stand firm in the knowledge that reality is not theirs to redefine. You have seen behind the curtain. You know the machinery of their manipulation. That knowledge is your shield and your sword. Use it. And now the sponsored book introduction. Work War on Language, a man's guide to fight back. You're holding a weapon, not a gun, not a knife, something sharper, words. They've been stolen from you, repurposed into tools of your own subjugation. I know because I've lived it. I've been called a bigot for stating that men can't become women. I've watched friends lose custody of their kids to courts that treat fathers like ATMs. I've seen boys confused and vulnerable, handed puberty blockers like candy by doctors who'd rather sterilize children than question dogma. This isn't theory, it's war. And if you're reading this, you're already on the battlefield. This book isn't for everyone. If you think toxic masculinity is a real problem, or that men should apologize for existing, close this cover now. Go knit a sweater. Take up yoga. But if you're tired of being gaslit, censored, and stripped of dignity by a system that hates you, keep reading. I won't coddle you with platitudes about dialogue or understanding. This is a manual for survival. You'll learn how to dismantle pronoun mandates with the cold precision of a lawyer. Expose the Tavistock Clinic's malpractice and reclaim your rights from divorce courts designed to bankrupt you. You'll see why gender equality is a fairy tale sold to neuter male ambition, and how feminism weaponizes terms like repressive tolerance to silence dissent. The data doesn't lie. 1,000% spikes in child gender referrals, male athletes dominating women's sports, 80% of divorces filed by wives. These aren't accidents, they're tactics. The left wants you docile, broke, and ashamed. I'm here to make you dangerous. This isn't about hate, it's about truth, biological reality, evolutionary psychology, the unbreakable laws of nature that no amount of woke posturing can repeal. You'll get actionable strategies, how to sue institutions pushing ideology over science, rebuild brotherhoods that reject simping, and arm your sons against schools that preach self-loathing. Non-target readers, last warning, put this down for the rest of you. Men who still believe in strength, logic, and the right to fight back, let's load your grammar guns.
Woke War on Language, a man's guide to fight back. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.